Chris Benedict got his first mount at a very early age, and he never looked back.
I think I was probably about 4. And my dad had bought me a horse for $50. And I remember his name was Ginger. And the guy that we bought him from was a horse trainer there in El Monte, California. And he come back that night and he messed up selling me that horse. And he put $300 down on the table and wanted to buy him back, and I wouldn't sell him back. He sold me the wrong horse, so he wanted him back. I wouldn't do it, so my dad said, well, it's the boy's horse, so, you got to deal with him. I wouldn't do it. So for $50, I got the horse and the saddle and a bridle. So that was my first horse when I was 4.
The Benedict family has always kept a few horses around, but it was a move to Rowland Heights, California at the age of 8 that changed the role the horse would play in Chris's life.
My neighbors raised POAs, and I started showing their ponies when I was 8. And Harold Farron was a neighbor on the other side. And so I would go down there and sit on the fence and watch Gary Belfont ride 2-year-olds. Gary was about 18, working for Harold. And so he was there, Rod Kelly was around there, Jim McNulty, all them guys. So I'd go down there in the morning, the bus would pick me up for school at 8. So at 6, I'd sit there and watch Gary from 6 to 8. And then I'd get home, get on my pony, and I'd ride back down there. And I'd sit there until it got dark.
The impressionable young man soaked up all the horse knowledge he could, from watching on the fence until one day Benedict received an invitation from his neighbor Harold to step into the training pen.
And he had a 3-year-old that was big, really big. And he was going to show me how to start it from the ground up. So we drove it a few weeks, we did all the whole 9 yards, and then when it come time to get on it, of course this thing bucked my ass off, and took off, and I'm laid out there in the arena, and Harold was at the other end loping circles and just left me. And I was 10 years old, and I thought, well, hell, this ain't right. So I got up, got the colt gathered up, tried to climb back on. He bucked me off a second time and knocked the air out of me. I laid there a while. Harold never come down there. And about that time, I was starting to get mad, So about the third time I catch him up and go to get him, Harold said, wait a minute. So he went down there and snubbed him up. I crawled on him, and he bucked around, and I stayed on, and everything was good. So we got done. And I asked him, I said, how come you didn't come help me the first time or the second time? He said, I just want to make sure you stay hooked.
After the family moved to Chino, California, Chris started training horses for the public. He was 16 years old. Mostly going to quarter horse shows, Chris showed reiners, cow horses, halter horses, and pretty much anything else he could get his hands on.
When I was a junior in high school, I seen Buster at the Chino Fairgrounds show Little Peppy. He was a 4-year-old. And I said, that's what I want to do. And it just stuck in the back of my head forever.
In March of 1980, Chris and Vicki were married. Their son Cole was born that December, and the couple moved their operation to Temecula, California to start DLR Ranch with Vicki's mother, Donna Lee Reeves. Despite a barn full of customer horses across all disciplines, Chris's heart was set on focusing strictly on the cutting pen, so he took on a hand to help him with everything else while he rode the cutters.
I hired Todd Crawford to come to work for me, and I gave him 29 paying horses, customer horses, reiners, everything. I said, you just take care of that and stay out of my round pen. I'm going to just do nothing but cutters. So I had 7. So that's kind of where it started.
In 1984, the California Cutting Horse Association approached Benedict about hosting the fraternity in his indoor arena. The show was a success, and that led to the DLR Ranch hosting 3 circuit cuttings each year and other shows as well. Chris was also part of the crowd that helped to organize and host the popular feedlot cuttings in Southern California and Arizona.
And then after that, we started putting on their monthly cuttings. And then when that association disappeared, basically, we just took over and started putting on the cuttings ourselves there in Temecula at the ranch. That's kind of how that went.
Chris estimates that over a course of 20 years, just about everyone who made the top 15 in the NCHA World Standings showed at their place at some point throughout the year. Chris and Vicki have always set the trend by giving back to the cutting industry, especially the next generation, helping to fund college scholarships.
I made it very explicit. We kept it in a bank account and everything, and when they went to college, college could write us, and we'd write them a check for however much money they'd want. But if they weren't going to go to college and they wanted to go do something else, that money wasn't available. It stayed in there and went on for more scholarships. That was the purpose.
The Benedicts love California. However, the biggest shows in cutting have always been based in Texas, and Chris found himself constantly on the road.
It's hard on a family, you know, as well as I do. When you're hauling and you're gone, the year that I hauled Marcelina was the last year I really hauled. I won the Pacific Coast. I think I was 5th in the world. I made 201 cuttings. I was in Temecula for 28 days. That was when the day after the fraternity got over in 95, or 94, till the World Finals at Houston in 96. I was actually at home in Temecula for 28 days, and 14 of those days I was putting on a cutting.
The change in the area code meant one thing. Chris and the family would be closer to the core of the industry, and the workload would go up.
We come up here to North Texas to show, and Patty Guston and Janet Robinson were secretary and putting it on. And Patty and I, and Janet, decided we were going to put on a cutting in the Will Rogers weekend cutting. It was a 5-day cutting that took 7 days to get through. And I remember we cut for 46 hours before we took a break, round the clock.
Chris has been producing cuttings for more than 35 years, served as a judge for more than 30 years, and he is a noted trainer and showman. Along with his wife Vicki, he runs DLR Ranch and Stallion Station in Texas, hosting many cuttings there as well. Chris has been heavily involved with NCHA, serving on the board, committees, and president in 2010 and 11. One thing has been proven for sure. If something needs to be done, Chris Benedict is not afraid to step forward.
There's some stuff that's got to be done, and it's not always pleasant, but it's got to be done. And in order for us to keep going forward, we've got to be doing it. Somebody's got to do it. The one thing I've learned after being president and being at that office as much as I was, it was a kind of a rough time for NCHA. We have employees that have worked for us for 30 plus years that don't own a horse, never owned a horse, that have been as dedicated as anybody in the world, and just love the NCHA and the family, you know. And I guess that's me. I mean, I just love cutting and the horses, and I'm going to be here, you know, as long as I can be. So,
while Benedict has had many successes in the cutting pen, it has been the 2 accolades that he earned outside of it, the Ed Smith Memorial and the Zane Schulte Award, that have meant the most.
Biggest thing that ever happened since I've been here. I was very fortunate and won the Ed Smith Award in California. And Zane, I remember Zane when he was a little kid, and I'd be sitting there in the stands watching, and he'd always come over and we'd talk. And it was just the nicest kid in the world. And so I kind of got to know Zane, and then with his passing and the development of that award, kind of knew what it was about. And to win it was just unbelievable. It still sits in my house where everybody can see it. That's the one deal that sits there.
Since his first glance at a cutting horse as an 8-year-old, Chris has wanted a life immersed in the sport. At the time, he probably would have laughed if you told him he would not only get his wish, but would become one of cutting's biggest supporters and be inducted into the Members Hall of Fame.
You know, I remember the day I was driving down the road when Louis Ray called me, and he told me that I was going into the Hall of Fame. and it was just kind of a blur. And I said, I thought it was a joke at first, because I really didn't know anybody that they were doing this behind my back. They kept it a good secret, and that's hard to do. And I thought, damn, I said, this is amazing, because like I said, that's not one you can win. That's one that the people around you decide that you can have.